paper reports that two of the male prostitutes were given a late-night tour of the White House last year.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Nick Bryant Podcast. Today, my guest is Bob Frodeman. Bob, how are you doing today?
It's a beautiful snowy day in Wyoming.
Bob is in Wyoming. Could you give us a little background about yourself?
Sure. I'm 66 years old, which means that my consciousness was formed 40 and 50 years ago in the mid-20th century, and now I find myself a refugee in the 21st century. I have a kind of existential orientation toward philosophy. If you look at some of my other books, we're going to talk about the Transhumanism book today. But if you look at some of the other work that I've been doing over the last 10 or 15 years, a coinage that I and some others have come up with is field philosophy. What happens when you take philosophy out into the real world, into the field, whether that is working on environmental issues with hydrologists or ecologists, or for that matter, the work I've done in Brussels with the European Commission. I am more interested in talking with non-philosophers than I am with philosophers. That we call disciplinary philosophy, which I think was the great mistake of 20th century philosophy. It allowed itself to be disciplined, to be captured by a discipline. That is, philosophy has been turned into, as Heidegger would say, a regional ontology, when philosophy is fundamentally a fundamental ontology that goes everywhere across the academy and everywhere across the world. So now I live in Holbrook, Wyoming. I am one of my main projects now is that I led the creation of a water and sewer district here in Holbrook. I am now the chair of the Holbrook Junction Water and Sewer District, and we're in the process of building a water and sewer system here. And I'm leading the charge to raise $10 million to construct this system, which means that I'm talking with state legislatures and the USDA and local officials and community groups.
So you're trying to actualize your philosophic thinking.
Yeah, that's right. And through this actualization, test it.
Did you ever see Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, where they had the philosopher soccer match?
Of course, yeah.
I love that, where they just, all of a sudden, they're all walking around. And then one finally gets the idea, well, I'm going to kick the ball. But it takes them a while to figure that out. I always love that. Bob wrote a book that I read, and I was quite impressed with it, Transhumanism, Nature, and the Ends of Science. Could you give us an overview of that, Bob?
That book, the title that I wanted for that book was On Limit. My publisher, my editor, fought me on this, said it's not searchable. You want something, you want keywords that are searchable. So we ended up with this academic title. My central focus, my work, and in this book particularly, not only this book, but I got a book coming out on the American West, which is titled, it comes out in the fall. It's called A Watershed Moment, the American West in the Age of Limits. So again, this theme of limit is the red thread running through my thinking. I'm fascinated and appalled by the technoscientific project, which today is implicitly transhumanist. which is to say, transhumanism as a movement is interested in deifying human beings, not through religion, but through science and technology, redefining age, for instance, as a disease. It comes in two varieties, transhumanism does. Either we're going to improve upon the simian body that we have, right? Or we're going to find a way to download our consciousness in some kind of silicon life form into a computer. That's Ray Kurzweil's craziness. And I see this project, the transhumanist project, to be implicitly the project of our culture. As Descartes says somewhere in the Rules for the Direction of the Mind, there is no need for the mind to be contained within any limits. In our pre-conversation, we talked a little bit about Plato and Aristotle. It's maybe the central trope of ancient thinking that if you do not limit yourself, you'll destroy yourself. Think about the cycle of hubris, ate, and nemesis. What happens when people fly too close to the sun? We have constructed a society dedicated to flying too close to the sun. I see this as fundamentally flawed and likely to lead to the extinction of our species, whether through nanotechnology, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, or a variety of other means. So this book tries to trace the trajectory of modernism or the Enlightenment and how it's now at the cusp of a disaster. And I end with a call for a different societal project rooted in the pursuit of something like maturity.
So when you talk about transhumanism, you talk about the background assumption that God is dead, that famous Nietzschean quote, which is pretty nihilistic. And you say that science, technology, engineering, and mathematics have become the new dogma. Right. What do you mean by that?
Well, let's think a second about what Nietzsche meant in section 125 of the Gay Science, that parable, right? Keep in mind that Nietzsche, of course, himself didn't say God is dead, but the madman did. And if you read further into that aphorism, the point is that we have exceeded all limits. We no longer put any boundaries on our behavior. That is what the concept of a God is a concept of limit. It's the concept of the proper, that there's things we're supposed to do and things that we're not supposed to do. And as Nietzsche said elsewhere, now anything is possible. And that is the technoscientific project. We've embraced this Nietzschean point. I don't see Nietzsche as celebrating this. In fact, my tendency about Nietzsche is to see that this thought drove him crazy. I don't buy the Kaufman read of Nietzsche that he caught syphilis while nursing during the Franco-Prussian War. I think his thinking about where the trajectory of our culture was leading drove him insane, as I think it's driving us insane.
The thing about God is dead, I've always thought that when Nietzsche said that, it wasn't an excited proclamation. He said he was very forlorn about the possibility.
Absolutely, that's the point. Yeah, he's not celebrating it. He says in that parable, 125 in the Gay Science, is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? I think it is too great for us. Human beings need limit. They need boundaries. They need borders.
Which brings in who you call the Pied Pipers of Silicon Valley. And give us your thoughts on the Pied Pipers of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, this is one of the chapters is titled "Aging Boys Will Be the Death of Us." And people like Zuckerberg and Musk are prototypical arrogant 14-year-olds. Let's try something and see what happens. You must have seen Ezra Klein's columns in the New York Times and a variety of other people in other locations 6 or 8 months ago talking about surveying AI experts in Silicon Valley, where 50% of them thought it was a significant possibility that artificial intelligence would extinguish all life on the planet. This is not a metaphor. They are seriously, profoundly concerned about this. At the same time, they, through some combination of resignation and excitement, say, let's keep going. Sam Altman embraces the project. This is a kind of insanity, that we're going to pursue something that has any chance at all of extinguishing life on the planet.
What's interesting, Ray Kurzweil was the one that spoke about, he was the first one to really ring the bell about artificial intelligence, that it would produce a singularity which would ultimately displace humans. And your book, you have an exchange with Kurzweil after he has really made this highly negative prophetic vision, and he's completely cool with it.
Well, is he cool with it? I mean,
he seems to be.
He gives a talk at Columbia University that I witnessed. I caught him afterward, and I asked him about the downsides of the singularity and which is to say basically infinite technoscientific advance. He says to me, any downsides will be outweighed 10,000 to 1 by the upsides. And then when I ask, yeah, but what if the one downside is the extinction of the human race? He doesn't answer. He turns and walks away. I find that to be a kind of perfect encapsulation of these guys' attitudes. They're just not, their ego and their mania drives them around the bend, and they don't confront the real moral consequences of their own ego.
And you bring in a Stephen Hawking quote in your book. We cannot know if we will be infinitely helped by artificial intelligence, or ignored by it, or sidelined, or destroyed. But yet he's really willing to go full forward, force forward. So that's kind of an interesting, and I think that, and Elon Musk has also warned against the dangers of artificial intelligence, but they nonetheless, like Elon Musk just unveiled Neuralink, putting chips in people's brains, although the CIA had done that with MK Ultra. But what do you think like Hawking, he was the preeminent scientist in the world. And he said, we got to go for it, regardless if it destroys us.
Yeah, this is a kind of unbelievable moral blind spot in these people. It's a religious, for people who think that they have transcended religion, this is a religious type of commitment to infinite knowledge production, and infinite knowledge production, particularly of a technoscientific type. I see it as unbelievably pathological that we live. I mean, let's set Trump aside, and those kinds of pathologies. The roots of the technoscientific project I see as deeply psychotic.